Good afternoon. I just wanted to make this video real quickly to help with some of the problems I've seen on the homework from homework number 1, mistakes that you're making, and kind of go over a few extra problems here. I'd like you to take a second and pause the video. Look at these problems and figure out what mistake was made. And if you don't know what mistake was made, then it's possible that you are making these mistakes. So take a second, look over these. Can you define what the mistake is in each problem? Okay, now that you have looked over them, okay, and remember, you should have paused the video. What are the mistakes made in each problem? So problem number 1 here, this person added 2 to both sides, but they made the mistake in thinking that that minus in front actually means it's being added, and it's not. This is being multiplied to the absolute value. So in order to solve this correctly, you need to be dividing by the -2, not adding 2. This is what it would need to look like with a plus sign between the -2 and the absolute value in order for that to be the correct way to solve that problem. Number 2, another same idea. They're adding that 5 when it is actually multiplication. And so the first thing that needs to be done in this problem is subtracting the 3. And this was a problem on our homework. And then dividing by the -5. The other mistake I'm seeing, if I have 3 minus 5, is people combining these two to make that a -2, and that's not correct either. I can't combine the 3 and -5 because that's -5 times that absolute value. And I can't distribute over absolute value bars either. So I need to undo the operations by subtracting the 3 and then dividing by the -5. And it's really important that you show good, neat work on the quiz, especially because I'm going to be looking at your scratch paper more so than I am going to be looking at the answers you type into the computer. I'll be grading and giving points and taking points away based on your scratch paper. So that's also important. Now, it's really important you understand that we know when you're using the PhotoMath apps, the Microsoft Math apps, the apps do things differently than we teach it, and it can sometimes be really confusing. And you don't understand why it's doing that, but you're just copying it down. We know, okay? We spent an entire year last year identifying the different ways that the apps do the problems, and so we can pick out app work very easily. And if you are caught using an app on a test and a quiz, you will get a 0 for those problems and not be given the opportunity to retake. Or you will be confronted and asked to show us exactly how you solved that problem. And most of the time, you're not going to be able to prove that you knew how to do that. And so that will be considered cheating and you will get 0s. So here's another problem from the homework. The absolute value of x minus 5 is equal to 3x plus 1. So we have the absolute value isolated. We're going to check for extraneous solutions because there's variables on both sides. And so my two equations are going to be x minus 5 equals 3x plus 1. The same problem, x minus 5 equals the positive of what it's equal to. And, oops, I don't mean that. X minus 5 is equal to the opposite, the negative of what it's equal to. And that negative needs to distribute to both numbers here. So this equation ends up being x minus 5 equals -3x minus 1. And then we can solve that, minus the 3x. And I get -2x minus 5 equals 1. And add 5 to both sides. Notice that I'm showing all my steps. If I don't see your steps, then I don't know your thought process. So it's really important you show all of your steps. And so then x is equal to -3. And then add my 3x on this side. We get 4x minus 5 equals -1. We're going to add 5. And so 4x equals 4. Divide by 4, and x is equal to 1. Now, because we have variables on both sides, it's important to check to see if the answers work. So we're going to check them. negative 3 minus 5, the absolute value of x minus 5, so that's negative 3 minus 5 equals 3 times negative 3 plus 1. That's negative 9 plus 1, negative 8 is equal to positive 8, because that's the absolute value of negative 8, which is not true. So that means this is extraneous. You need to show this, okay? You need to show your check so we know which one is extraneous and how you got that. And then we'll just check the one in case. The absolute value of 1 minus 5 equals 3 times 1 plus 1. That's the absolute value of negative 4 equals 3 plus 1, and 4 equals 4. That one checks out, so our only answer is x equals 1. And when you're doing a multiple answer, multiple choice, you're not going to select the extraneous answer. You're only going to select the one that is correct. If you select the extraneous answer, you're going to end up getting that one wrong, because that tells us you didn't check for extraneous. And we need to check for extraneous when there's variables on both sides. Okay, so this was a similar problem on the homework. And again, we want to see it done this way, not the app way, not changing signs on other things. We leave what's inside the absolute value positive. So we keep, for our right two equations, it's going to be 5x equals x plus 24, and then we leave it 5x and we change it to the opposite of what it's equal to. What happens is people start changing what's inside the absolute value and they don't change everything correctly and they end up with the wrong answer. And remember, when you have more than one thing, it has to distribute that negative. So the negative goes to the x and the 24. So this equation, 5x equals negative x minus 24. And so we're going to add x, and 6x equals negative 24. X is equal to negative 4. And then we're going to subtract x here. 4x equals 24. Divide by 4. X is equal to 6. That solving should not be an issue. Okay, that solving should be easy. We should be getting those things correctly. Remember that this is Algebra 2, and if you struggle with your Algebra 1 skills, it might be a good idea to talk to your counselor about taking Math 90 to review those Algebra 1 skills before you and then you could come back to Algebra 2. Okay, so we're going to check extraneous now. Okay, I have variables on both sides, so I need to check. 5 times absolute value of 5 times 6 equals 6 plus 24. That's absolute value of 30 equals 30, and 30 equals 30. That works. And then we have the absolute value of 5 times negative 4 equals negative 4 plus 20. That's the absolute value of negative 20 equals, oops, that's a 24. 20, and 20 equals 20. So both answers are correct. And if it's a multiple answer, you need to select them both, not just one of them. Now this is the other problem that we saw in the homework. Lots of people making mistakes here, and lots of people combining that 3 and the 5, and that can't be done because that 5 is getting multiplied, and we can't distribute over absolute values, so we need to undo the operations around these absolute value bars. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. Negative 5 times the absolute value of 2d minus 3 equals 1. Divide by negative 5. Okay, because this is multiplication, so we're going to divide. So I have the absolute value of 2d minus 3 equals negative 1/5. Now at this point, we can say, oh look, I have the absolute value. It's equal to a negative. Therefore, it's no solution because the absolute value cannot equal a negative number. And you don't need to keep solving that. But you do need to show all the way down to this step, not just stop here. Okay? And remember that the absolute value has to be isolated and equal to a negative in order for it to be no solution. And here's a few problems that might be on your next worksheet. I'm not sure, but I'll go over them anyways, just so you can see some extra instruction. So here again, negative 3 times the absolute value of 1/2 x minus 5 equals negative 12. And we had something similar to this on the Ed puzzle, and a lot of people were missing it because of some really small things. So here we're going to divide by negative 3. And I have the absolute value of 1/2 x minus 5 equals positive 4. See, we can't make an assumption about whether it's no solution or not until the absolute value is by itself. So now I can write my two equations because the absolute value is equal to a positive. So 1/2 x minus 5 equals 4. And 1/2 x minus 5 is equal to the opposite, negative 4. And so I'll also add 5. 1/2 x equals 9. Now, 1/2 x means 1/2 times x. The opposite of multiplying by 1/2 is dividing by 1/2 or multiplying by the reciprocal, timesing by 2. So x is equal to 18. And always check to make sure, oh, half of 18 equals 9. Yes, that is correct. A lot of people are dividing the 9 by 2 and saying that x is equal to 4.5, which is not the case. We need to make sure that we are undoing that operation correctly and multiplying by 2. And then on this one, we're going to add 5 as well. 1/2 x is equal to 1. And again, we're going to times by 2. So x is equal to 2. And 1/2 of 2 is 1. So that worked. Now I don't have variables on both sides, so extraneous isn't as much of an issue, but I can still plug it in to check if you wanted to. And x, the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 2x. So we have our absolute value is by itself. So we have x minus 3 is equal to 2x. And our second equation is x minus 3 is equal to negative 2x. And then we're going to solve these. I'm going to subtract the x. So negative 3 is equal to x. And then I'm going to subtract the x on this one as well. So negative 3 is equal to negative 3x. Divide by the negative 3, and x is equal to 1. And then I'll plug them in. I have variables on both sides, so I need to check. So the absolute value of negative 3 minus 3 is equal to 2 times negative 3. That's the absolute value of negative 6 is equal to negative 6. And 6 does not equal negative 6. So that means this one is extraneous. And then the absolute value of 1 minus 3 is equal to 2 times 1. The absolute value of negative 2 is equal to 2. And 2 equals 2 works. So my answer is x equals 1. And again, on the quiz, when you're typing in your answers, if one of them is extraneous, you are not going to type that answer in, and you're not going to type it and write extraneous next to it. The only answer is x equals 1, but on your paper, on your scratch paper that you will submit to me, you are going to show me that you checked it, and then you can just cross out the answer and say extraneous, or just cross it out like this. That's understood that that is extraneous. So I hope this helps as a little review before tomorrow's quiz, which you are to take after school. We didn't want to deal with device and Wi-Fi issues while we were not in person with you. So we are expecting academic honesty, that you do this to the best of your abilities, and hopefully you do well. Have a great evening.